The sun was hot above the broken land of Yarian. Dust floated in the air, and the wind carried a dry, empty silence. In the middle of a ruined arena stood a tall wooden post. Tied to it with thick ropes was a young woman named Nara. Her hair was tangled, her dress torn, and her legs were bleeding where the creatures had scratched her. But even though her body was weak, her eyes were still strong. She didn't scream, she didn't beg. She stared straight ahead, holding on to the last bit of strength inside her. Around the arena, the Korin cheered. They were tall, gray-skinned, aliens with sharp teeth and loud voices. They ruled this side of the planet now. Once Yarian had been a peaceful place, but that was before the Korin came. They destroyed the villages, burned the farms, and captured the people. Now they used Nara and others like her for sport. They tied them to posts and released hungry beasts into the arena. They laughed when people screamed. They cheered when the beasts attacked, but Nara had not screamed. And this made the Korin angry. "Release the next beast," one of them shouted. The gate on the far side of the arena opened slowly, metal grinding against stone. From the darkness, a long shadow crawled forward. The creature's eyes were red, and its mouth was wide with sharp teeth. Nara's breath grew short. She had survived 2 smaller beasts. This one looked faster and more dangerous. Still, she didn't cry. She whispered to herself, remembering her father's words. "Fear can break your voice, but never let it break your heart." She closed her eyes for a moment, holding on to the memory of her home green fields, clear skies, and the sound of wind chimes her mother used to hang by the window. Then the wind changed, far above the arena. In the sky that once held Yarian's moon, a small ship moved quietly through the clouds. It was silver and shaped like a winged fish. Inside, a man sat at the controls, looking at a screen. His name was Darren, and he was human. Darren was not a soldier. He was a systems engineer, trained to fix machines and study old ruins. He'd come to Yarian to map forgotten places and check for signs of life. The world had been marked as low danger and mostly abandoned in his files. But then, he picked up something strange a week, broken signal coming from the surface. It was old and badly damaged, but it repeated one clear word: help. Darren narrowed his eyes, adjusted the scanner, and a few blurred images appeared on his screen. One of them showed the ruined arena. It was hard to see clearly, but he caught a flash of movement. Girl a post. Beast's dot. His heart sank. "This isn't right," he said aloud, even though no one else was there. "This place isn't empty." Tap to command. The ship turned, flying lower toward the surface. As he descended, the ground below him came into view: dry hills, broken buildings, strange shapes moving in the dust. He found a safe place to land, far from the arena. Behind a ridge, he grabbed his scanner, a small drone, and a pack filled with tools. No weapons, he hadn't brought any. He hadn't expected danger. Still, he couldn't ignore what he saw. Someone was in trouble. She was alone. Meanwhile, Nara stood still as the large beast growled and stepped closer. Its claws scraped the stone floor. The Korin laughed louder, throwing bones and stones into the arena. One of them shouted, "Run, little human. Let's see how long you last." But Nara couldn't run. She was tied, her legs too weak. Still, she refused to cry. She looked up at the sky one more time, somewhere up there among the stars. She believed help might come. Maybe not now. Maybe not soon. But someday, and then she saw it, a small glint in the sky, like a star moving across the clouds. Hope flickered in her heart, far from the arena. Darren moved through the trees quietly. He saw strange tracks, scorched ground, and signs of battle long past. He followed the signal's direction, climbing up a small ridge. There, he sent his drone forward. The drone flew low, scanning and recording. When it reached the edge of the arena, Darren saw the live feed on his screen. He saw the crowd of Korin. He saw the beasts. And then he saw her, the girl tied to the post. His jaw tightened. "That's it," he said quietly. "I'm going in." Darren returned to his ship. and began pulling gear from his storage crates. He didn't have weapons, but he had tools cutting lasers, shock sensors, magnetic clamps, flash bursts, and a repair drone with extendable arms. He opened his toolkit and started building. He didn't think about fear. He didn't think about odds. He thought only about one thing. No one should ever be left like that. Back at the arena, the beast stepped closer. Nara's blood dripped slowly down her leg. Her hands clenched behind her back, ropes cutting her skin. She whispered, "If this is the end, let me face it strong." And from the crowd, a strange sound echoed buzz. Click. Pop. The beast turned its head. So did the KORR in the shadows of the outer wall. A small flying drone hovered. Nara looked at it, confused. Then she heard a voice low and calm coming from a speaker on the drone. "Hold on, you're not alone anymore." The small flying drone hovered above the arena, its camera lens glowing softly in the dusty air. All eyes turned to Ichorn beasts, and even Nara. It wasn't large or loud, but something about it felt strange to the alien crowd. "What is that?" growled one of the Corrin guards. "It's not one of ours." Another hissed. The beast below the drone growled too, confused by the buzzing sound and blinking light. It stepped back, no longer focused on Nara. Nara looked at the drone and blinked. For a moment she forgot about the ropes, the pain, the blood. The voice that had come through it was clear and human. "Is someone there?" she whispered, not knowing if anyone could hear her far away. Behind a broken hill and deep in the trees, Darren watched the drone feed from a small screen strapped to his wrist. His heart was beating fast, and his hands moved quickly as he adjusted settings on a small controller. He had seen the beast pause. He had seen the Corrin hesitate. It gave him time. He turned and looked at the flat ground where his ship had landed. It wasn't big, just a scout craft, but it carried enough tools for repairs, scans, and short missions. Not built for combat, not meant for rescues. But today, it would be used for something else. "I have one chance," Darren said to himself. He grabbed a small pack and filled it with the items he had quickly assembled: a portable light projector, a magnetic trap, some shock charges made from mining tools, and a patch kit with healing gel. Then he picked up his repair drone, now reprogrammed to follow him. The ship's systems gave a quiet tone. "Warning, area not safe. Recommend evacuation." Darren shook his head. Not yet. Nara's arms were numb. Her body was shaking from blood, loss, and weakness. But her mind was still awake, still trying to understand what was happening. The flying object, whatever it was, had caused the beast to pause. The Corrin were shouting now, angry and confused. "Shoot it down." One of them barked. A Corrin guard lifted a launcher and fired. The small rocket hissed through the air toward the drone. Nara held her breath. The drone zipped upward. "Asked too fast for the rocket to follow." It twisted and flew over the arena wall, vanishing from sight. The crowd roared in frustration. But Nara felt something new inside her. Hope 10 minutes later. A guard was walking along the outer wall of the arena when he heard a quiet click. Looked down just in time to see a round metal object sticking to his armor. A second later, a sharp electric shock sent him to the ground. Unconscious, Darren pulled the body behind the rocks and took the alien's wrist scanner. He scanned it into his translator device. Now he had a basic layout of the arena and its exits. His plan was risky, but there was no other choice. He whispered into his mic, "Hang on, I'm coming." Inside the arena, the beast had been locked back in its cage, and Nara remained tied to the post. The Corrin seemed angry and confused, not sure if they were under attack or being watched. Some wanted to continue the show. Others wanted to search the area. But before they could decide, the lights around the arena blinked and went dark. A strange, humming sound filled the air, and then came a flash. One side of the arena wall exploded, not from a bomb, but from a focused pressure wave made by Darren's mining shock tool. Dust and smoke covered the area. The crowd screamed and ran in the middle of the confusion. Darren ran forward. He wore a suit of flexible armor patched together with ship panels and protective padding. It wasn't made for battle, but it protected him from sharp edges and claws. He reached Nara quickly. She looked up at him with tired, wide eyes. "You're real," she whispered. "Yes," he said. "Let's get you out of here." He used a laser cutter to break her ropes. She collapsed into his arms. He sprayed healing gel on her legs. The bleeding slowed. The smoke was clearing now. Shouts came from behind. "Time to move," Darren said. He picked her up and ran toward the broken wall. The Corrin guards chased them. A few fired stun bolts, but Darren ducked and zigzagged, holding Nara close. His repair drone flew beside him, activating smoke bombs and sound traps. Explosions filled the air, non-lethal, but loud and blinding. The ground shook as a magnetic charge pulled a tower of stones down, blocking the path behind them at the top of the ridge. Darren reached a cave entrance hidden behind bushes. He stepped inside and laid Nara gently on a soft bed of moss. She coughed once, then smiled. "You came from the stars," she said weakly. "I came because someone needed help," he replied. Darren quickly set up a sensor to block tracking. He gave Nara water and wrapped her legs. She was badly hurt, but alive. Looked at her and saw more than pain. He saw strength. She had not begged. She had not cried. "You're brave," he said quietly. Nara looked at him with calm eyes. "And you are human." Darren nodded. "That's right," she smiled again. "We thought your kind was a story. Long ago we heard that humans protected the weak," Darren said. The cave was quiet, hidden behind thick trees and broken stones. Inside, a small fire crackled gently. Darren sat near it, checking the healing patch on Nara's legs. She was resting on a thin blanket he had brought from his ship, her face pale, but calm. She looked at him with tired but curious eyes. "Why did you help me?" Darren paused. He didn't have a perfect answer. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He'd come to Yarian for research, not to fight. Not to save anyone. But when he saw her tied to that post, surrounded by monsters and cruel creatures, something inside him refused to turn away. "I saw you," he finally said, "and I knew I couldn't just watch." Nara gave a faint smile. Almost would have. Darren looked down at the tool in his hand, a small repair device used for sealing broken wires. He'd used it to close the wound on Nara's side. Around him were more tools, scanners, wires, pieces of metal, and a few blinking devices. None of them were made for war, but Darren believed they could still make a difference. "We don't always need weapons," he said. "Sometimes we just need the right tools and the right moment." Outside the cave, the Corrin were angry. The attack in the arena had embarrassed them. One of their prized beasts was injured. A human, someone they thought had left this part of space, had stolen a prisoner and escaped. The Corrin leader, Commando Vorak, stood tall on a stone platform, his sharp claws resting on the handle of his staff. "Find them," he growled. "Search every ruin, every forest. I want that human, alive." His guards moved fast, spreading through the old villages and hills. Their tracking devices scanned for heat and movement. Drones buzzed in the sky. Beasts sniffed the ground, but they found nothing. Darren had placed a false signal device near an old farm. It kept the Corrin busy in the wrong place. Back in the cave, Nara tried to stand. "Careful," Darren said, helping her. "Still healing. I need to move." "I need to help," she said softly. He looked at her with respect. Even after all she had suffered, she still wanted to fight back. "All right," he said. "We'll start slow." He brought out a small hologram projector and opened a map of the region. "This is your village?" Nara nodded. "It was. Now it's a ruin. They took the people who survived and brought them to the mining camps. Others were taken to the arena." Darren's jaw tightened. "How many guards are left in the village?" "Not many. Maybe 5 or 6. The rest go to the arena or patrol." "The roads." Darren leaned back, thinking. He couldn't fight 6 guards head-on, but maybe he didn't need to. That night, he worked on his gear. He took his scanner drone, once used for mapping tunnels, and reprogrammed it to fly low and silent. He added sound projectors that could mimic beast roars and Koran commands. Then he connected his tools with wires and sensors, building traps that could stun, confuse, and disorient. Nara watched him work with quiet interest. "You build like a farmer planting seeds," she said. Darren smiled. "I guess I am planting something. Not food, but a chance." She looked at his hands, calm, careful, always thinking ahead. It was clear to her now, he didn't come to destroy. He came to restore. The next day, Darren and Nara left the cave. Early Nara moved slowly, but with determination. She used a walking stick made from a strong tree branch. Her steps were light, guided by years of knowing the land. Together, they reached the edge of her village just after sunset. Smoke rose in the distance. The guards had set up a camp in the center near the old water well. Darren and Nara hid in a high spot, watching from the shadows. He passed her a small device. "What's this?" she asked. "It's a trigger. When you press it, the light trap will go off. Just wait for my signal." Her heart beat faster, but she nodded. Darren moved like a shadow, slipping past trees and broken walls. He placed a sound trap near the well, then another one behind an old house. Each one would make the Koran believe beasts were nearby. When he was done, he returned to Nara's side and whispered, "Ready?" She looked down at the guards. Some were eating. Others were resting. Darren gave her a small nod. She pressed the trigger. Suddenly, a roar filled the night air, deep and loud, like a wild creature just outside the village. The Koran jumped to their feet. They grabbed weapons and looked around, confused. Then the second roar came from the other side. 2 of them. One guard shouted. A flash of light blinded the group for a moment as the first trap activated. Then came smoke. Then noise. Darren whispered, "Now." They moved fast, quiet, and unseen past the confused guards. Nara led him to the back of the village, where a group of prisoners were locked in a stone room. Darren used his cutter to slice. The door opened. Inside were 4 villagers. Old, tired, but alive. Nara. One of them whispered in shock. "We're getting out," she said. They led the villagers through a hidden path in the forest. Darren's drone flew above, watching the guards from a safe distance. By morning, they were back at the cave. The villagers wept with joy. They had thought no one would ever come for them. Darren gave them food, water, and basic medical care. One of the older men looked at him and said, "You are not like the others." "I'm just an engineer," Darren replied. "No," Nara said. Gently, "You're a human." And for the first time since arriving on Yarian, Darren felt the true weight of that word. The night was cool and still. Stars blinked above the trees as Darren sat beside a small campfire just outside the hidden cave. Around him, the rescued villagers were sleeping. Nara sat nearby, awake and alert, watching the fire with quiet thoughts. Darren added a small piece of wood to the flames. "They're safe now," he said softly. "Yes," Nara replied. "But others are still in chains. Many were taken to the mining camps in the north. We leave them, they will die." Darren nodded. He had already decided. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was a mission. Not one he had planned, but one he couldn't ignore. "I'll help," he said. "But I'll need time." Nara turned toward him. "Time for what? To build something they don't expect?" The next morning, Darren and Nara began scouting. The land between the cave and the mining road, the path was full of rocks, dead trees, and the remains of old machines left by Yarian's ancient people. Darren walked slowly, thinking like an engineer. He looked at a broken pillar and smiled slightly. "That'll work," he turned to Nara. "We'll set the first trap here." Nara raised an eyebrow. "A trap?" Darren knelt and pulled a small device from his bag. "Not the kind you're thinking. This one doesn't kill, just confuses and frightens. If we can scare them, delay them, we can strike from the shadows." He placed the device behind the pillar. It hummed softly, then blinked blue. "What does it do?" she asked. "It creates a copy of sound," he replied. "You can make it sound like 100 humans are marching, or like wild beasts." Chase ghosts while we move. Nara smiled. Clever. They spent the next 2 days setting up more traps. Darren used mirrors from his ship to reflect lights in strange directions. He placed vibration sensors under old paths so he would know when Corrin patrols were near, and he reprogrammed his flying drone to shine light and create moving shadows from the trees. All of it was built from simple tools. It's nothing designed for war. But Nara could see something special in the way Darren worked. He didn't just build machines. He built hope. She watched as he taught one of the rescued villagers, a boy named Tommy, how to connect wires and set a sensor. Tommy's eyes lit up with wonder. Do you mean I can make it work too? Yes, Darren said with a smile. Anyone can learn. Knowledge is more powerful than fear. That evening, as the sun fell behind the hills, a group of Corrin scouts entered the forest. They had followed signs, broken branches, and a faint heat trail. They were sure the humans were hiding nearby, but the moment they stepped into the first trap zone, the ground vibrated. Loud stomping sounds echoed through the trees. One of the scouts shouted, "A large group is coming." They ran toward the noise, weapons ready only to find nothing. No people, no beasts, just empty forest. Then a flash of light startled them. A sharp sound burst in their ears. Smoke followed. Confused and disoriented, they turned to leave. The path behind them had changed. They ran in circles, shouting to each other. Darren, watching through his drone's camera, smiled. It worked. With the Corrin distracted, Darren and Nara moved toward the mining road. Nara led the way through secret paths she remembered from childhood. When they reached a rocky ledge, she pointed down. There, that's the supply convoy. It brings food, tools, and fuel to the mining camp. Below, 3 heavy trucks were parked near a supply post. Corrin guards stood around checking crates and loading gear. Darren studied the scene carefully. If we take control of those vehicles, we can reach the camp and free more prisoners. Nara looked worried. But there are too many guards. Not if we turn the land against them, Darren replied. They waited until nightfall. Darren placed one of his strongest flash traps near the main path. He connected it to a timed signal. Then, with Nara's help, he covered it with leaves and dust. From a distance, he activated a sound signal deep, roaring call of a beast. The Corrin turned quickly, grabbing their weapons. One of them shouted, "It's the creature again!" As they moved toward the sound, the trap went off. A blinding light filled the area. Loud cracking sounds followed. Smoke spread across the ground. The guards stumbled, covering their eyes and shouting. That's when Darren and Nara moved. They ran from the ledge and slid down the hill. Darren used a small electric tool to disable the security lock on the nearest truck. The engine started. "Climb in," he shouted. Nara jumped into the passenger seat. Tommy and one of the villagers they had brought along joined them. The truck rolled forward fast. Behind them, the guards began firing, but their shots were wild and confused. The stolen truck roared through the trees. Heading north by dawn, the mining camp came into view. It was built from gray stone and metal cold and harsh. Fences surrounded it, and towers stood at each corner. But inside, Darren saw something else, people. Dozens of them, working in chains. Nara's eyes filled with quiet pain. "They've been here for months," Darren nodded. "Not for much longer." They parked the truck behind a large boulder and crawled closer. Darren studied the camp, searching for weak points. He saw a control box near the south wall, one wire linked to the electric fence. "If I reach that box, I can shut down the system." "But how will we stop the guards?" Nara asked. Darren gave her a calm smile. "We won't. The forest will." Back near the camp entrance, his drone flew low, carrying a loudspeaker. It began playing the sounds of heavy footsteps, angry voices, and wild animals. Inside the camp, guards panicked. Some ran to the gates, others shouted for reinforcements. At that moment, Darren reached the control box and connected his tool with a quick pulse of power. The electric fence shut down. Nara and the others rushed in, breaking the locks and freeing the prisoners. One by one, the people of Yarian stood, their chains falling, and behind it all, in the rising morning light, stood Darren, quiet, steady, and human. The sun was rising over the hills of Yarian. Soft golden light touched the trees and made the dust sparkle in the air. Smoke was rising, too, from the broken fences of the Corin mining camp. Dozens of villagers, once trapped and forced to work, now stood outside the camp. Their wrists still showed red marks from the chains, but their eyes were full of hope. They were free. Darren stood at the edge of the camp, checking his drone feed. It showed a Corin patrol heading toward them from the east. 5 vehicles, many soldiers. He turned to Nara, who was helping the last few villagers climb onto the stolen supply trucks. "We don't have much time," he said. "They'll be here soon." Nara looked at the freed villagers. Some were old, some were too weak to run, others carried small children. "We can't leave them," she said. Darren nodded. "We won't." He opened his pack and pulled out a small black case. Inside were a few more trapped smoke shells, light flashers, sound repeaters, and a mini EMP device he had built from mining parts. It could shut down Corin weapons for a few minutes. "Time to run with fire," he said. Darren gave quick instructions. The villagers would split into 2 groups. One would go with Nara toward the cave through the forest path. The other would follow Darren through the canyon road, leading away from the patrol. He would make them believe everyone was escaping that way. "I'll make noise," he told Nara. "They'll chase me." Nara looked worried. "What if they catch you?" "They won't," he said with a small smile. "I have a few surprises left." She held his arm for a moment. "Be careful. You too." Like shadows in the trees, the 2 groups moved in different directions. Darren drove one of the heavy trucks down the rocky road, fast and loud. Behind him were 2 decoy lights, blinking to mimic other trucks. His drone flew in the sky, sending false radio signals and Corin words he had recorded. It worked. The patrol spotted the signals and followed the canyon trail. They believed the prisoners were escaping in that direction. Darren checked his map. The narrowest part of the canyon was just ahead. He stopped the truck and jumped out. Carrying the EMP device and a flash trap, he placed both near the rocky wall and ran to a hidden spot on the side. Within minutes, the Corin vehicles appeared. The lead vehicle passed over the trap. Click, boom, bright light exploded, and the EMP fired at the same time. Sparks flew. Engines stopped. Weapons failed. Corin guards jumped out, shouting. Darren didn't wait. He triggered the drone to play beast roars from both sides of the canyon. Echoes bounced off the walls. Then he ran through the side path, vanishing into the rocks. Behind him, the Corin were trapped in fear and silence. Their gear was down. Path blocked, and Darren was already gone. Meanwhile, Nara led her group through the forest path. The trees were thick, and the old stone trail was broken in many places. She helped the weaker villagers walk. One woman carried her baby close to her chest. An old man held onto a stick for balance. Tommy, the young boy who had helped Darren build traps, stayed close to Nara. "Will Darren be okay?" he asked. Nara looked up at the morning sky. "If anyone can make it, he can." They moved slowly, but safely. No patrols. No guards. The Corin were all chasing the wrong group, just as Darren had planned. Hours passed. By noon, Darren rejoined the forest group near the outer hills. He was covered in dust, sweat on his brow, but he was smiling. "You made it," Nara said. "So." "Did all of you?" Darren replied. The villagers clapped quietly. One woman offered him water, another a piece of bread. Darren accepted both with thanks, but he knew this wasn't the end. The Corin had lost control of the mining camp. They had lost prisoners, supplies, and their sense of safety. That meant they would return stronger, angrier. "They'll come back soon," he said, "and they'll bring more soldiers." Nara nodded. "Then we must be ready." At the group, these were not fighters, but they had heart. They had courage. They had something even stronger than weapons. They had each other. Back at the cave, Darren set up more sensors and hidden alarms. He taught the villagers how to place simple traps, ropes, nets, trip alerts. He gave them small radios built from his ship's spare parts, so they could call out danger if needed. He even taught Tommy how to fly the drone. This button makes it go up. This one records. And this one, he said, pointing to a switch, makes noise. Tommy laughed. I want to scare the Corin too. Might get your chance, Darren said. At night, Darren and Nara sat near the fire again. You've done more than help us, Nara said softly. You gave us a reason to stand. Darren poked the fire gently. I only used what I had. Tools, ideas, the rest. That came from you. She looked at him, eyes calm and serious. Say you're not a soldier, but I've seen real courage. In you, you don't fight with guns. You fight with your heart. That's what makes you human. Darren was quiet for a moment. Then he looked up at the stars. My people always believed in helping others, no matter the risk. Maybe that's what it means to be human. To stand up when others are down. To fight not for power, but for peace. That night the stars above Yarian shone brighter, and deep in the woods, where once silence ruled, the voices of the free whispered through the trees. They were no longer just survivors. They were something more. They were ready. The moon hung high in the dark sky, casting a pale glow over the ruins of Yarian's once peaceful lands. In the distance, the sounds of the Corin camp were faint guards patrolling, beasts growling, and the soft crackle of fires. But tonight, something was different. Near the edge of the forest, Nara and Darren moved carefully through the shadows. They carried small devices and healing kits, but more importantly, they carried a plan. A plan to change everything. For years, the beasts of the arena had been chained, trained, and controlled by cruel collars. These collars sent signals that forced the creatures to obey the Corin's commands. The beasts had been prisoners forced to fight and scare the villagers. But now, Darren's technical skills and Nara's knowledge of the land and animals, they hoped to break that control. They approached the holding pens quietly, where several of the horned beasts were kept. One of them was Kreia, large creature with deep eyes that seemed to remember the old days of Yarian. Before the Corin arrived, Nara knelt beside Kreia's cage, whispering softly, "It's okay, old friend. We're here to help." Darren pulled out a small device, an advanced signal jammer. It was designed to block the caller's control signals. It took careful work to get close without the guards noticing. Suddenly, a noise came from the camp entrance. 2 Corin soldiers were walking toward the pens. Darren quickly hid behind a large rock, signaling to Nara to stay low. The guards stopped nearby, chatting loudly in their harsh language. "We need to finish the repairs on the arena before the next event," one said. "The humans are a problem now," the other growled. "We need to make an example." Nara's jaw tightened. As the guards moved on, Darren and Nara slipped closer. They attached the jammer to Kreia's collar and activated it. Immediately, Kreia's body relaxed. The beast blinked, confused, but no longer held by the collar's control. Suddenly, Kreia let out a low growl, but it was different, less angry. More questioning, Nara reached inside the cage and touched Kreia gently. "You're free," she said. "No more chains." Darren smiled. "Now, we just wait." The next morning, the camp woke to an unusual sight. Kreia was calm and not following orders. Instead, the beast stood near the fence, watching the Corin soldiers with quiet eyes. The guards were confused and nervous. Collars weren't working. Then other beasts began to act strangely. Some stopped their usual attacks. Others moved toward the fence as if searching for freedom. The Corrin commander, Vorak, appeared furious. "Find the human," he shouted. "Destroy their machines. Break the beast's will." But Darren and Nara had a plan. They moved through the camp, using the noise and confusion to their advantage. Darren's drone flew overhead, shining lights and playing recorded beast calls. Smoke traps filled the air with thick clouds, hiding their movements. As guards scrambled, the beasts began to shift. Kriya let out a powerful roar that echoed through the camp. The other creatures responded, some breaking free from their pens. The Corrin soldiers were caught between fighting the humans and calming the beasts. The balance of control was breaking. Vorak confronted Darren in the center of the camp. His eyes burned with anger. "You think you can defeat us with tricks?" he growled. Darren stood tall, holding a small device in his hand. "I'm not here to fight like you. I'm here to free those who cannot fight for themselves." Vorak sneered. "Humans are weak. They rely on machines and tricks." Darren smiled calmly. "Maybe, but sometimes that's enough." He pressed a button on the device. A loud hum filled the air as a shockwave spread beneath their feet. The ground trembled. Vorak stumbled, losing his balance as the arena's floor began to collapse under him. The beasts, now free from control, turned toward the chaos. They surrounded Vorak and his soldiers. It's not to attack, but to block their escape. Vorak shouted orders, but his voice was lost in the noise. In the confusion, Darren and Nara gathered the villagers and led them out of the camp. The Corrin guards were trapped inside, surrounded by beasts who refused to fight their former captors. Outside, the freed people of Yarian watched as the Corrin fled. The aliens retreated into the night, their control broken. Nara looked at Darien with gratitude. "You saved us all," she said. Darren shook his head. "We saved each other." The villagers cheered quietly, knowing this was just the beginning of a new life. As dawn broke, Darren and Nara stood on a hill overlooking the camp. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky with colors of hope. Nara smiled. "They thought we were weak, but they never understood the strength of humans." Darren looked at the rising sun. "It's not just strength, it's heart. And when humans have heart, they can change worlds." Together, they watched the first sunrise of freedom on Yarian. The wind blew gently across the open fields of Yarian. The broken land was still scarred from years of pain, but now it breathed new life. Birds sang in the trees, and flowers began to bloom in places where only dust had fallen before. At the edge of the forest, Nara stood tall, looking toward the horizon. Behind her, the freed villagers worked together, building shelters, clearing fields, and sharing stories of hope. Beside her, Darren watched quietly. His eyes held the calm strength of someone who had found a new purpose. The battle against the Corrin was over, but the work to rebuild had just begun. The Corrin forces had fled, their control broken by the courage of humans and the will of Yarians creatures. But the villagers knew the aliens could return someday. They had to be ready. Darren and Nara met with the village leaders to plan for the future. "We need to teach everyone what we have learned," Darren said. "Knowledge is our strongest weapon. Machines, traps, teamwork, they will protect us." Of the elders, a kind woman named Mira nodded. "We will learn. We will grow strong. Not to fight wars, but to defend our home." Days turned into weeks. Darren helped the villagers repair old machines left from Yarian's past water pumps, communication devices, and energy collectors. He showed them how to build simple drones for scouting and warning. Nara trained the young people to move silently through the forest and listen to the signs of nature. She taught them how to understand the beasts not as enemies, but as friends and guardians. The creatures, once forced into chains, now lived freely near the village. They protected the people from danger and helped with heavy tasks. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and purple, Darren and Nara sat by a fire. With the villagers, a young girl asked, "Are you really from the stars?" Darren smiled softly. "Yes, I come from a world far away, but I learned something important here. No matter where we come from, we are strongest when we help each other. Nara nodded. We're not alone anymore. We are a community, humans, beasts, and all of us together. Months passed, and Yarian began to change. The ruins became homes. The empty fields turned green. The fear that once gripped the people was replaced by hope. Darren and Nara stood on a hill one morning, watching the sunrise. "We did it," Nara said quietly. "We did," Darren agreed. "But this is only the start." She smiled. "The start of a new story, one where people live free and strong." Darren looked at her, "Where humans are not just from the stars, but part of the land." Why far away, beyond the skies of Yarian, other ships watched silently. Some were friends, sent by Darren's people to help. Others were curious watchers from distant worlds. But on Yarian, one thing was clear. Human courage and kindness had brought light where there was darkness, in the heart of the village. A statue was built, a simple stone figure of a young woman tied to a post, standing tall with her head held high. Around the base the words were carved, "Freedom is born from hope, and hope is born from those who refuse to give up." Nara stood beside the statue, her hand resting gently on the cool stone. Darren joined her and said, "This will remind. You will no matter how dark the night, the dawn will come." She smiled, looking up at the brightening sky. "Together, we will make sure it never goes away." And so, on a world once ruled by fear and pain, a new era began. An era where humans and their strength built from heart, hope, and courage shone brighter than any star.